So, it's the summer of 2015, and activist Bree Newsom has just made herself an icon of the Black Lives Matter era by climbing a flagpole at a South Carolina state house to remove a Confederate flag. Who left that there? Never mind that. The whole country's debating again about the meaning of the white supremacist symbol on Facebook, including a childhood friend of mine, a black woman that we'll call Jay. Now, Jay writes that the Confederate flag, it just reminds her of home. And I'm sitting there biting my nails as I read this black woman defend a pro-slavery symbol, thinking to myself, baby, stop it. But I also know where she was coming from because I grew up with her in the South, where they managed to convince themselves that slavery wasn't all that bad and that the Confederacy wasn't born from some racist desire to make a profit through the breaking of black bodies. So I couldn't be too mad at her in the moment because I recognized that there was once a time when I thought like her and would find myself as a member of an oppressed group defending, sometimes even cheering for, the oppressor. And that contradiction is the consequence of something that we call common sense. Common sense isn't naturally occurring in a society. It's actually shaped by the powers that be through institutions like the media, the educational system, and organized religion. These institutions tell us stories. And by stories, I mean lies that frame the status quo as immutable, inevitable, justified, and in many cases throughout history, even divinely ordained. And they tell these stories because the stories make populations easier to rule. The stories do more than ensure an obedient population, obedient to something guns and tanks can ensure. No, the stories secure a state of enthusiastic compliance, something in ancient times kings and tyrants called by the political term love, and they wanted to induce that term love for the emperor, for the empire, for one so-called master, love for a racist symbol used to terrorize your ancestors and the very people they were oppressing. So throughout history, oppressors have sought to make patriots of the oppressed because domination systems always work more smoothly when the subjugated comply. Patriarchy is at peace when women know their place. Heterosexism is at peace when LGBTQ people hide their identities. Slavery is at peace when the enslaved are well behaved. And I think that our generation has lived through a political miracle, a global shift in consciousness, a political awakening, in that Black Lives Matter has become a matter of popular opinion, and the end of policing is now a matter of public contention. Seeing millions of people march the streets around the world, toppling colonizer statues and chanting defund the police is evidence that the movement is pressuring the world toward a new common sense about racial justice. And we need that kind of awakening because if we're in love with the status quo, we're not gonna fight for change. I know this because that's my story. The story that I'm telling in my book, and it's many other stories. I think many people assume that once we start talking about racism, that all black people are experts on the subject due to lived experience alone, but that doesn't factor in the ways that the empire tries to train us in its own common sense. And without interventions, be it a parent telling a child how to survive a police encounter, or exposure to a conscious black news source, or a liberation message from a pulpit somewhere, or even just listening to grandma's stories, the oppressed can be taken in by the empire's self-portraits. So I think that's how you get so many famous black faces repeating anti-black talking points. And in my personal social circle, I encounter a lot of black people, especially youth, who don't understand how anti-blackness is baked into the society we live in. And that awareness is crucial to our survival so we can live wisely, so we can defend ourselves, so we can organize for our freedom. So my story has me convinced that the revolution begins with an uncomfortable process of awakening from the empire's love spell.